Welcome to the next episode of this Healthy Life podcast. I'm here with Tomás El Rayess today, and he is a multifaceted creator, chef, and self-healer who merges ancestral traditions with modern science to nurture gut health and holistic well-being. With a background in art, multimedia, production, and a passion for soul work, he guides individuals on a journey to integrate mind, body, and spirit for intentional living. Tomás draws from his diverse experience across continents to empower others with his work as a documentary producer, the founder of Fuego, Ancestral, Gut Health, and Probiotic Provisions. Tomás is also a dear friend of mine, and I'm so happy to be here talking to him about all things gut health and just overall holistic health. He's going to share so many tips and wisdom. So welcome, Tomás. So great to see you and have you here today.
Happy to be here, Erica.
Awesome.
Thanks for the invite.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So can you share a little bit about your personal journey and what got you on this path towards healing and working with what you call the 9 food groups and what exactly that means for health and gut restoration?
Yeah, sure. So I moved to the US in 2009. I was living in Tokyo before that. And so in Japan, I was always really healthy. I was also younger. But
that's usually the opposite of most people, right? Usually people are not healthy when they're younger. And as we age and start to have ailments, that's when we start to turn to health.
Oh, I hadn't looked at it that way. Yeah.
So you were already ahead of the curve.
So in Japan, I was eating mostly seafood and vegetables and, Japanese style fermented stuff. And portions were really small. So I was a student. I was 27, 28. So I was always super skinny because I didn't have enough food.
So you were starving, a true starving student.
But then I moved to New York. And then back then, 15 years ago or 17 years ago, I didn't think whether I bought grass-fed, wild-caught, organic. I just went to the supermarket in the Lower East Side and I bought stuff. I bought food.
Was there. Yeah.
And I got really sick. And I was sick before then. Like in my early 20s, I had I was lactose intolerant. I had severe allergies. Mm-hmm. I would wake up and sneeze for 10 minutes, and my eyes would swell. And I cut cheese and gluten because a doctor's just said, cut off nuts and chocolate and coffee and eggs and everything. And I was like, okay, what will I never stop eating? Eggs, chocolate, coffee? No way, I'm not going to cancel that. But I canceled cheese and all that. But that was just a Band-Aid, right? And so that quickly degenerated into chronic inflammation and severe gluten intolerance. And it got to a point where I couldn't even eat beans or rice of any kind. Mm-hmm. And I would get swollen, up here in my stomach. I would get not arthritis, but pain. Joint pain. Mm-hmm. And so I was so desperate, ran into a friend one day around 2013, and we were both kind of researching the same thing. And we said, we need to do a documentary about this. And then we started producing Beyond Food, the movie, which is the documentary I ended up launching in 2017 here in LA with Gravitas Ventures. It's on demand. It's available everywhere. And it was kind of like my personal journey of desperately looking to feel well and to understand, how does this thing work? How does health really work? I don't know what I have. And so I ended up specializing in anti-inflammatory diets. We interviewed all the great names in health and wellness, Dave Asprey and Rich Roll and Darren O'Lean and Laird Hamilton and Marielle Hemingway, a bunch of amazing people. And just exploring also all the different schools of thought and the different practices out there. But I didn't really know. So I ended up specializing in kind of a paleo-ish primal diet. But I was still sick. And it wasn't really until I took this genetic microbiome test in 2017 and I saw what was going on with my gut flora and my gut lining, which were the 2 markers that caught my attention instantly.
And what was going on with those? What did you find on the test?
So what I saw was, it would show you a score from 0 to 100. And it said gut flora 5.
Oh my goodness. So non-existent.
Gut lining 6.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, oh, I know what's wrong.
Yeah.
I hadn't really, connected the dots until then. And so I thought, oh my God, I've learned, I've read, and I've studied the ancestral nourishing traditions of many countries and the paleo diet and all this stuff. I know all these things, but I don't practice them medicinally. I practice them
telling
gastronomically.
them for everyone else, but not doing it for yourself, right?
Yeah, because I didn't really understand why, and I kept asking myself and beating myself up in a way, like, why me? Like, why can't I? It was painful socially as well.
Yep.
Right? I would go home and they'll be like, oh, poor Tomás, he can't eat anything, and socially at a restaurant, you're like, no, I can't eat this. I can't eat that.
I know that pain well.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I saw those two markers and I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to, write myself a prescription and I'm going to eat every day some type of fermented vegetable, apple cider vinegar, Jun kombucha, just because I prefer it to regular kombucha. And it's got green tea and more antioxidants and bone broth and all the things that I knew were medicinal. And in a matter of months, I was so much better. Then I retested years ago. I retested last July, less than a year ago, here in LA, and my gut lining result was 85 out of 100. So I went from 6 out of 100 to 85, and I've sustained it for 7 years.
And this is just with dietary changes. You didn't do any other changes or any other interventions?
No, in terms of stuff that you put in your mouth, in terms of stuff that you eat. But I did do a lot of soul retrieval and healing work because I feel like it took me longer to understand how my body worked. But I had to do that in order to be well enough so that I could focus on my soul and healing from a lot of trauma, childhood trauma, and complex PTSD. Which
is always part of it. Like people think that your body is disconnected from your mind and trauma, but all of that is so intertwined. And, they say our guts are second brain. So like it's also thinking for us and processing emotions, and what we eat, what we think is always affecting our health. So
absolutely.
It's a big piece of it.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you. A lot of the foods that you just mentioned are, fermented foods and bone broth and things like that. They're all very high in histamine. And a lot of times when people have chronic inflammation or health issues, there's a big push right now that a lot of people are having like mast cell activation, things like that. And so they don't do great with high histamine foods, even though these can be healing. What's your thoughts on that? Like, and are there ways that you can still integrate some of these foods while still being mindful of histamines?
Yeah. Well, in my experience working with clients, most allergies and those reactions, those like high histamine reactions and all that, come from having a weakened digestive system. And that includes, as far as I'm concerned, that's my theory, your gut lining and your gut flora. Of course, if you have, say, bacterial overgrowth in your small intestine, or you have candida or any kind of imbalance, I wouldn't get someone started with a lot of fermented foods, a lot of like kimchi and sauerkrauts and stuff like that. But I would definitely start them on bone broths. I would definitely start them on apple cider vinegar, maybe kombucha if they're okay. But if there's too much yeast, maybe not. That would be a case by case thing. And I would definitely have them take a genetic sequencing test of their microbiome, see what's up, run some labs, and also, secondly, and most importantly, look at their diet. Most of my clients come to me and they're like, I don't know why I'm suffering. I eat so well. And I'm like, okay, let's look at how you eat.
Yeah.
Do you know?
A lot of times people think they're eating healthy, and then you actually start to break it down. You're like, well, this is all turning to sugar, and you're already having issues. And, a lot of people tend to go like these days, like plant-based, or integrating a lot of like legumes and things like that. And unless it's prepared properly and soaked the ancestral way, like it can be very hard on your digestion and actually cause your gut lining to break down even more. So you think you're being healthy, but you're actually causing more problems for yourself, more problems in the gut.
Absolutely. I think, like I have them write down this week as much detail as possible. What did you eat? And then ask them like, what are your needs? Where do you want to go from here? What do you really desire in terms of like, how do you want to feel? Do you want to lose weight? Do you want to gain weight? What's going on? What's making you suffer? And then looking at that, And then you kind of cross and integrate the lab results with the genetic sequencing, with their objectives and needs, their wants, and their, I was going to say feeding, their nourishing plan.
Their feeding plan. I like that. It is kind of a feeding plan, right?
Yes.
Then their feeding schedule.
And then also the cool thing is, like, I'm not an advocate for any specific belief system. I really think your body is a living metaphor and everyone needs something different, right? So like, I have clients who are vegetarian. I don't work with vegans, but I have clients who are vegetarian. I have clients who are full-on carnivores and everything in between. Primal, paleo, like more Mediterranean. It really, and I also encourage people to get in touch with their body and learning how to really listen and feel the messages that your body's sending all the time.
Yeah, that's so important. I feel like we get so out of tune, and I think finding your perfect diet and finding the diet that works for you is such a great way to kind of tune into your body system and like start to listen to it. And it almost gives you like a newfound tool. So you can use it with other things. You can use it like with people, even like, this person makes me feel stressed out, or I feel good with this person. You can use that feedback in a lot of places, your environment, things like that. So it's such an important tool, and it doesn't work just with diet. You can use it in everything in your life. So I think it's a lot of people don't think they have that, or don't have a connection to it, and using diet to try to get that, I think is a good way to learn it.
Yes, to come back to your question, I didn't use anything else. I didn't take any probiotics, and this is again it's my theory. I've read very few articles. There's no scientific literature, but I think that food in its like whole ecosystem is much more effective for your body. Your body will recognize it and use it more efficiently than isolated probiotics in powder form or any other. And then,
plus a lot of times you're taking probiotics and you don't even know if that's the one your body's missing or the one your body needs. And
exactly.
Might be causing more
Here's
issues,
an interesting
right?
fact. So last year when I tested, and I have a really healthy and very nutrient dense and, diet, my labs, no, not my labs, my Viome, the microbiome sequencing test, didn't show any probiotic type lactic acid bacteria. There were a lot of lactic acid bacteria in my gut flora, but none considered in the probiotic category. Does that mean that they weren't there? I don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know.
No one
Maybe
knows.
they don't stay, But the important thing is, so your gut lining has these cells called epithelial cells, and they recognize through patterns what should come in and what shouldn't, and what should stay out. Isn't that a beautiful metaphor for boundaries? Or
absolutely.
So it kind of mirrors your emotional and spiritual self and all that. And so if that's in a strong state, your epithelial cells are there, they're rich, they're healthy, they can grab the nutrients they need, and they won't let in what shouldn't go in.
Yeah.
At the same time, a rich and diverse microbiome, a rich and diverse gut flora, will allow you to also absorb, nutrients in a more efficient way, and just feel better overall. Yeah.
And that leads into my next question. So, we hear a lot that our gut is our second brain, and it really can help with like our mental health and emotional health and things like that. What has been your experience just as you've healed your gut? Has your mental health changed? And what has it been with the people that you work with as well that are on their gut healing journey? What have they noticed?
Oh, absolutely. That's an amazing question because there's so many layers to it.
Yeah.
So for me, yes, there's this beautiful thing that goes on with, we really have three brains, right? It's our gut, it's our heart, and it's our brain. Yeah. And then your genomes, let's say your genome, your epigenome, your microbiome, and your virome, which is what we know the least about. And the microbiome also, it's been 16 years since we sequenced the microbiome.
So who knows what they would find
right?
now, right? With all our new technology.
Exactly. So those four genomes are interacting with your nervous system, with your immune system, your defense, right? Yep. And hormones and growth factors. And the seat of your immune system is in your gut. Like 70-80% of your immune cells are there. but also most of the serotonin and dopamine are created there.
Yep.
Right. And so not only like we were saying, right, there's no difference between your mental, emotional, well-being and your physical well-being. They're one and the same thing, or two sides of the same coin, if you will. But I've worked with clients, for example, this lady, she has 2 kids who are diagnosed with autism. And we changed their diet, and one of them started talking.
Wow.
Started talking.
That's amazing. What were some of the things that you pulled out of the diet that really helped kind of...
She had already done so much work,
him.
And she had read everything. She just introduced bone broth and a few fermented foods.
Wow. And that just helped kind of balance the gut a little bit, enough to bring them out a little bit.
And cut off that inflammation, and she removed anything processed, all sugars. And the children are doing great. And that's like, wow, I didn't even know we could do that.
That's fantastic. I love hearing stories like that.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? Okay, so, we've talked about gut lining and gut flora and things like that. Obviously, sometimes we can also have gut infections. So whether that's parasites or H. pylori or SIBO, you talked a little bit about candida and yeast. I mean, some of those things you can't heal just with diet and foods alone. What are your thoughts on using interventions or herbals and things like that to acutely treat some of those infections?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like oil of oregano oil, sorry. And whenever necessary, if you have to use antibiotics, you have to sometimes, the body is so beautiful that it's always aiming to restore your health and be balanced. And so even if you have to, you take antibiotics and then you get better again, and you kind of flood your body with.
Yeah. And that's actually a great point to bring up. So, there always is a time and a place for antibiotics. And sometimes it's inevitable that we're going to have to take a couple courses through the course of our life, hopefully not more than that, right? But at some point take them. And so what are things people can do if they do have to take antibiotics to kind of regenerate their gut as quickly as possible and help it heal from having to take the antibiotics?
Well, definitely work with these 9 food groups that I always talk about in different proportions. I also encourage everyone to always use very little. I had a client who said, I don't know, the kombucha is kind of like not really good for me right now. And I'm like, how much are you drinking? He said, no, like 5-6 cups a day.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, that's way too much. That's a lot of kombucha, So it's not like you need a lot of these things. So as long as you're also like not only, and I'll come back to your question, but like we're also mineral deficient. We're micronutrient deficient, right? Not only do we need fermented foods and a variety of microorganisms and bone broth for all the amino acid profiles and the proline and glycine and all that, but we also need food that's rich in minerals and vitamins, and that comes from the soil. So, that's why I recommend eating really organic or food that's grown in either biodynamic or regenerative agriculture and pastured animals or wild caught and all that. Of course, if someone has SIBO or, candida or things like that, you need to, talk to someone who knows about this and choose which ones you're consuming when, right? Like you would, like I was saying, I wouldn't give someone kombuchas and kimchis and sauerkrauts if they're going through that. But yes, bone broth and apple cider vinegar and cutting off certain food groups for a while. Yeah. I always keep on telling my clients as well, this is not for like forever. You can do this for like a month. Yeah. Wouldn't you do that for a month and then feel great
and
next
see what
month?
Happens. Yeah, exactly. It's just enough time to like heal yourself and kind of give your body a little break from what it's dealing with, and then hopefully be able to tolerate those things again.
Yeah. It's very interesting also. So there's all the ancestral nourishing traditions, but also science allows you to see things you wouldn't otherwise catch. So for example, in my last test, my gut lining and flora were great, but I saw that my oxalate processing in my gut wasn't great, and that I was producing too much tryptophan or something like that. And so turkey and shrimp right now are not great, and neither is turmeric. And turmeric is, everybody thinks, oh, turmeric is amazing because it's so anti-inflammatory if it's paired with black pepper and so on. But right now, according to the test, it's like, just hold off. Hold off on the turmeric for a while.
And did you feel a difference when you cut those things out? Did you feel any changes? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And also like to educating ourselves into our metabolic type, like in Ayurveda, it's known as Kapha, Pitta, Vata. In modern science, endomorph, ectomorph, mesomorph. So if you're a person like me, I was born like this. I was born, big.
Yeah.
I hold on to fat much more easily and all that. So a diet that works for me is not going to work as much for my best friend from childhood in Paris, who's like super skinny and cannot put on any muscle, has to eat 6,000 calories a day to just maintain. Must be so nice.
Can I get that body, please?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So you have some cool projects. I want to touch on a couple of those. Cool. So tell us a little bit about your Fuego Ancestral project and what that entails and what that covers.
So Fuego Ancestral used to be called Ancient Fire. I made one day here in LA in 2016. For months I was developing a fermented hot sauce.
Yep, I remember this.
Yeah, and just for fun, and I was giving it to friends. Yeah. You were one of them. And just consuming it myself. And then the logo just came out of a couple ayahuasca experiences and synchronicities that happened in Joshua Tree. And then I was in the Amazon and then, and I ended up coming back from the Amazon one day and drew this logo that has kind of like an anaconda around it and the eyes of a jaguar at sunset, in Santa Monica or something. And then there's a hawk. I just saw a hawk, by the way, on awesome. Fairfax. Anyway. And then I left for Colombia. No, I left LA in 2018 and I took a sabbatical for like a year and a half. I was just around the world and doing my podcast back then. And then I landed in Colombia and the pandemic hit a few months later. And it was locked down and I was like, you know what? People need some healthy stuff. And I started like letting people know that I had a fermented hot sauce. And then I had a bone broth. And then I was like, you know what? I'm stuck here. I'm just going to cook. Yeah. And I started cooking.
That's what a lot of people did at the beginning of the pandemic, right? I learned cooking and baking.
I learned to make bread.
Yes. Banana bread took the internet by storm. Did you have ancestral banana bread?
No, but I ended up developing 30 products for the gut health food company. Amazing. That is Fuego Ancestral in Colombia. And it started growing and growing and growing and growing, and now it's fully operational in Colombia, and we sell 2 types of bone broth with adaptogens, with reishi and astragalus and dandelion. Is it going to be coming to the US soon too? That's why I'm back.
Great, fantastic. I think that's gonna.
And fermented foods, and we have we have fungi kimchis, oyster mushroom kimchi and shiitake kimchi. And a bunch of other delicious things. It's all food. Yeah. Good food. Yeah. And cacao, like Colombian single origin cacao with adaptogens for workouts and stuff like that. Awesome. It's exciting.
Well, I'm excited for you to launch it here and check it all out. Yeah. Sounds great. And
I brought you some. Yeah. I brought you some of that cacao with adaptogens. I don't know if you're...
that sounds delicious. Yeah. And then you've got quite a few projects going on. You also just launched a book on sacred writing that's focused on soul retrieval. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that and what that book is about and what that part of your journey looks like?
Yeah, sure. So after I healed my body, I arrived in Colombia and I was like, okay, I'm here because I need to heal a bunch of pieces. I need to go pick up the fragments of my soul that I left.
Put it back together.
Bring them back home. And so it was very interesting. It was a 4.5 year journey of healing, not only with plant medicines, also a lot of inner work and a lot of therapy. Not your regular therapy anyway, but yes. And I started collecting and writing. I've always been a writer, and then a friend of mine invited me last year to co-write this book and we're 4 authors. It launched today, April 20th. We just had the launch party on Zoom earlier, and it was a great experience because I'm a teacher, so I'm always explaining stuff, and it was very refreshing to not have to explain anything. I just wrote stories, just to be a storyteller. Yeah. And so they're a collection of very short stories that happen in Paris, LA, Tokyo, New York, Bogota. And sometimes they read like fiction. You're not sure whether you're reading or whether it's true or whether I'm tripping. It's like an inner journey.
It's all a blur.
Yeah. But they're inspiring and they're fun, and they're in a way, it kind of reads like fiction or fantasy sometimes.
Okay.
So it's exciting. And the other authors, we all end up writing about the same thing. To me, sacred writing is about like how you write your existence, right? Because it's our lives are inner realities, right?
Yeah. Great. Well, I'm excited to check this out. And then you also have another awesome project coming up as well. You're going to be doing a gut masterclass that's going to help people just kind of work on their gut on their own, not have to be working directly with you, but they still want to. Is that right? Or if you can share a little bit more about that project that's coming out to help people on their journey as well.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, we're going to start shooting next month, hopefully, here in LA. It's based on my book, the book that I wrote at the beginning of lockdown in 2020. I wrote it in Spanish because I was there. I was in Colombia. And it's basically, these 9 food groups and why they're good for you. There's all the theory and about how your genomes work with your gut and your immune system and nervous system, etc. And they have all the recipes and all that. And now we're working on the book in English, but also the masterclass on video, which is exciting because then, you'll probably be in there.
How exciting.
And
I'd love
we'll
to.
be cooking and talking about health, and people can just like watch it and learn by watching us cook and make all these recipes. And
using
at the end of the
food
day,
as medicine.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, it's very simple. At the beginning, of course, the learning curve is a little steep, but then it kind of simplifies your cooking as well, because you have like a mise en place at home. You have a bunch of bone broth and you have your variety of fermented foods. And it's very easy to put together a very, very nourishing meal. So.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people get intimidated by cooking, or you're like, oh, I don't know how to cook. And really, once you learn like a few basic steps and you're using quality ingredients, you don't really have to do that much to your food. Like your food tastes good on its own, or like, the produce tastes good on its own. You don't have to douse it in all these complicated flavors and sauces. Like just use the food for what it is and, keep it simple and keep it healthy.
Totally. Yeah. Another beautiful thing is most of our products are like super colorful, and people ask, how do you make this look like this? I'm like, it's the color of the food. There's no artificial colors. But if you put a little piece of like, let's say beet, into these turnips that you're fermenting in a brine, they turn like bright pink and they look amazing.
So pretty. Yeah.
Kind of like in Korean barbecue, or daikon, I love just colorful, vibrant food as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. Me too. Yeah. And so if someone's just starting out on their health journey, what advice do you have for them to kind of get started? And one thing I want to make sure that you cover in this too is you mentioned you did some like gut testing. Like I think you said you used Viome, which is great. I've done Viome a few times too. Would you say that's kind of your go-to tool to start with that, doing some microbiome testing just to kind of see what your baseline is? Or can people just start working on their gut if they know that they have something going on? Or what's kind of the best way to track your progress and best place to start?
Yeah, I think I would start with Viome. I don't know of any other tests here in the US.
Yeah, there's a couple. There's another one I've used a couple of times called the Gut Zoomer by Vibrant Labs that I think is pretty good. It's a little different from Viome, but it's really good at kind of looking at your gut permeability and kind of what gut population you have, and also infections and things like that. So I'd say probably those two. There's one, Genova Diagnostics, that's like I think a little bit older, but I would say Viome or the Gut Zoomer are probably the two.
That's cool.
Top that I would say are most helpful these days.
Yeah, I would really encourage people to start with that, and then at least doing one session with someone who knows about this stuff,
Yeah.
because I see so many people trying to figure it out. Because there's so much information available to us, it's very easy for someone who's not really experienced to kind of start drawing conclusions from reading a bunch of articles. But you're still in the dark. You don't truly have the capacity necessarily to put together a diet that's going to work for you and that's going to help you heal.
Yeah.
So you don't need to work for with my clients, I don't usually work more than, a month. Like 4 sessions or something.
Yeah, just to
sometimes
kind of get them
much less,
or a baseline.
Because at the end of the day, we look at the labs, we look at the test, we come up with your plan, and then it's up to you.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. We can't hold their hand and make them dinner every night.
We can do some checkups. I'll show you the door, but you have to walk through it, kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But definitely that, and what I was saying about just get in touch with not only what hurts you, but what makes you feel amazing, and to recognize that. Because oftentimes here in the US, we also tend to be very caught in like, oh, these foods are bad for you, and this is bad for you. And where your attention goes, you start freaking out or not, right? So to also recognize and honor and get more of those things that when you eat them, you either feel okay, so that's why maybe you don't realize that you're great because it doesn't make you feel sick.
Yeah.
And recognize what's making you bloated, tired, fatigued, gives you brain fog. Like when you're well, you feel light, you feel energized, you have more capacity to produce energy. You
crave those bad foods less and less because you're like, I can feel so good eating these things. Why would I eat that? But that is something I want to touch on. I think a lot of times, especially in the beginning when you're transitioning to like a more healing diet, you can feel really deprived sometimes. And, you're kind of mourning your old life where you could just go have pizza or eat whatever you wanted, or you thought you could eat whatever you wanted. So what do you have to say for people who say, I'm trying really hard, but, I went to a birthday party and I just couldn't help myself. I had pizza and I had a piece of cake and now I feel like crap. So like, what do I do now to fix that? And, we're all humans, so we're obviously going to have to live a little and make some mistakes. But I think over time, like you said, you're less likely to do those things because it makes you feel bad. But what can you do to kind of help and coach people in the beginning transition when that probably is going to take place a few times?
That's a great question, because we tend to be super hard on ourselves and not taking into account that we need transition times, and transitions take time.
Yes.
So you don't go from eating like crap and feeling like shit to feeling great, in a very easy, graceful manner.
And even as you do start to transition your diet, a lot of times you kind of go through a little bit of a detox process or like a carb flu even, as your body's kind of resetting and clearing out. So there may be 3-4 weeks where you're like, I feel worse, but if you give it that time, eventually you're going to start to feel better. But there is that transition where you're like, why am I doing this? I'm feeling worse. Like, shouldn't I be feeling better? I'm being so good. Yeah. So I think that's something that's good to always remind people too, that it's, as you say, a transition and we need to give it time.
Absolutely. And then also another great exercise that's helped me a lot is to really be very clear on your values, like not the collective values, just your personal ones. Like what is important to me in my life above everything else? And that's your compass. And if you know that, then nothing can get in the way. Because if you've tried for 3 months and you're still not doing it, and you're still beating yourself up and eating really poorly and making poor choices, then it's the moment that you realize you need to go see a therapist, because there's something else blocking you that you're not aware. You're not aware of, and it's very common too. It's not bad, I'm not I'm not judging.
We're all works in progress.
I've been there, but there's many unconscious things that are blocking us in life. That's why we're not aware of them, because they're unconscious. They're installed in your body. It's something that happened in your mind, in your heart, when you were a child, maybe. Complex PTSD is something that is not one traumatic event, but like a recurring thing that happened. I don't know, abandonment, lack of love, whatever it is. And so it goes from the mind into your body and becomes unconscious. And then sometimes, but if you choose, like say, my values, I decide that my values, I want to create feelings of love and light and generosity and abundance every day, and I want to have great connections, And I'm gonna design everything that I do on a daily basis to nurture those states of consciousness, those values. If that's my compass, then, you know, and that's important to me. If I don't do that, I'm kind of betraying myself, and I don't want to do that. You know?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely a process. More
It is a process.
More than just eating different food. It's a lot. It's a big mental, emotional shift that has to happen too.
Yeah. And also be kind, you know, like I beat myself up so much.
We all do.
Yeah, we all do. So to remember to be kind.
Yes.
Yesterday, so I just got back to LA on Thursday, and yesterday I went to the beach. I was there and my mind was racing and just like going into the future so fast. I started feeling anxious, and I'm like, I just arrived. I'm at the beach. Why am I feeling so anxious? And I had to like consciously make the effort to bring my attention back here into the present and just enjoy the ocean. It was a beautiful day.
Why go to the beach if you're just going to make yourself anxious, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You're supposed to go to reset yourself. But it's hard in the moment. Yeah, it's like good to have that awareness to be able to kind of bring yourself back and, you know, be present and be grateful for where you're at.
Yeah.
So amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing all this wonderful information. If people want to find more about your projects and masterclass and books, where can they head to get more information about you?
Yeah. So they can go to tomasreyes.com. That's TOMASRAYES.com. Or Instagram, Tomás Reyes Varela. That's my second last name. It's really long, but whatever.
We'll go ahead and link to all this in the show notes too.
Thanks so much, Erica.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for the great questions.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. And thanks so much for tuning in to the latest episode of this Healthy Life podcast. You can find all the information on my website, thetrailtohealth.com.